And then when you understand the principles that are in spirit, the laws that govern spirit, as in my expression, in my cultural expression, through Torah, through the Torah, okay, and through the messianic consciousness, if you will, it informs me of my identity as an individual, but also as my role relates to a collective and a social collective, okay? So in Exodus 19, verse 5 and 6, this is when Israel comes out of Egypt. You know, they're just being formed. They're an embryonic people, a nation that was just born, if you will, the birth of a new nation. And they were told to prepare themselves to encounter the Most High at the foot of this mountain on which Moses would ascend to the peak, okay? And there was a covenant that they were about to make. There was a marriage that they were about to enter with heaven in order to fulfill their role, their collective identity as being these types of people for the earth's good, for the oneness of the earth. So in Exodus 19, verse 5 and 6, it reads, "And now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples." But there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. "For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a set-apart nation," or a holy people. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Israel. And understand there is a physical Israel, and there also is a spiritually born Israel, okay? There's twofold. There's a physical seed, and there's a spiritual seed, okay? And all those who do the will of the Most High, who are in covenant with the Most High, are the seed of Israel, spiritually or physically. But the key is to be that spirit, because that's what truly transcends all. And so this people were chosen to be a collective, identified group of priests and a peculiar, if you will, or holy people. So what is peculiar about these people is their holiness, their way of life, their collective consciousness about what principles they live by, what orders they follow. Okay, and to kind of expand this is from 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 to 10. Speaking of the messianic consciousness, the ultimate fulfillment in identity of this collective, it says, drawing near to him. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 through 10. It says, drawing near to him, a living stone, rejected indeed by men, but chosen by Elohim and precious. You also are living stones. You are a technology. You are a building as a body of people that is set to function in a way like a temple functions. Okay, let's get to this though. But you are being built up a spiritual house, your household, your organization, if you will, or well, shall I say your organism. But you are being built up a spiritual house, a set-apart priesthood to offer up spiritual slaughter offerings acceptable to Elohim through Yahushua, the Messiah. I know the Messiah as Yahushua, the Redeemer, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, if you will. Because it is contained in Scripture. What happened? Stop it. Because it is contained in Scripture. See, I lay in Sion or Zion a chief cornerstone, chosen precious, and he who believes on him shall by no means be put to shame. This believing is becoming, though. It's not just saying, I believe. It's about reflecting that. If you believe it, you do it, right? Let's get to it. This preciousness, then, is for you who believe. But to those who are disobedient, you see the corollary to that? If you're obedient, you believe. If you're disobedient, you don't believe. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. And we know who the most rejected cornerstone or the rejected stones are on earth. We understand this, but we have to understand why and then what that's pointing to. Why this identity is assumed for this awakening, continuing on. And a stone of stumbling and a rock that makes for falling, who stumble because they are disobedient to the word, to which they were also appointed. That is the appointment that you are to enter into of the transformative essence of the word. That's what we're to enter. But you are a chosen race. Here we go. This is why all this was done. You are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a set-apart nation, a people for a possession, that you should proclaim in praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who were once not a people, but now the people of Elohim, who had not obtained compassion, but now obtain compassion. And this is what this is about. This is what this identity is to assume and is to create. This is the purpose of this reformation, okay? And how we can know what our identity is for. I want to make sure this time is used wisely. I don't want to go into too many tangents. I want to get, this information to you all. This is some powerful information, and I pray that it's received in the way that it's given, in the energy and the love that it's given. Because this is what, is in my heart, which is why Shifting Paradigms is brought to you all here on KUAW. So moving on to culture, okay? Identity is to be expressed in a culture, okay? A culture, according to the American Sociological Association, it is defined as the languages, customs, beliefs, rules, arts, knowledge, and collective identities and memories developed by members of all social groups that make their social environments meaningful, not vain. We're not supposed to be seeking vanity. We're supposed to be seeking meaning. We're supposed to be seeking purpose. When you identify with a group of people who are understanding the meaning of life, the value, the beauty, the power of life, then you create that and you expand that, which is what culture is about. Culture, spiritually, is what Adam was told to create when he was told to be fruitful and multiply. That is the culture. That is how you create not only physical bodies, but also minds and then spirits. What are spirits? Well, the spirit of love, the spirit of truth, the spirit of justice, the spirit of counsel, the spirit of knowledge, the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of Yah, the seven spirits that feel life is what culture is to create and express, based on the collective consciousness of the identities involved in those interactions. That's a mouthful, but all praises to the Most High, because this is really like the dynamics of life. So again, etymologically, culture comes from a figurative use of the word culture in the sense of cultivation through education, systematic improvement and refinement of the mind. And this is attested to as of around the 1500s. Culture was understood to be cultivation through education, systematic improvement and refinement through the mind. That's what culture is intended to be. That's the standard of culture, if you will. It's the standard. It's the principle of what culture truly is intended to be. When we understand how improvement and refinement of the mind are at the heart of true transformation and change, well, then we got some work to do. We realize that. Let's move on, though. Century Dictionary writes that it was not common before the 19th century, except with strong consciousness of the metaphor involved, though used in Latin by Cicero, meaning learning and taste. Culture means you have learning and you have taste, right? You are well learned and you have a good palate, right? You have good taste. You have fine taste because you've refined yourself, and now you have a fine taste for the finer things of life, which produce life, because that's what culture is about: reproduction, proliferation, continuing on. It is the intellectual side of civilization. Culture is the intellectual side of civilization. If you're civilized, well, then the next thing, because you got peace already, so now you're in order, you got peace, but now what you going to do with that peace? You're going to reproduce. You're going to refine this peace that you've created, to maintain this peace that you've created, and to promote and espouse and share this peace that you've created. That's what they call being an evangelist, sharing the good news. That's the good news, okay? But this was around 1805, in which the meaning of learning and taste, the intellectual side of civilization, that culture was in 1805. It's closely related to the sense of collective customs and achievements of a people. Achievements, right? Not destructions, achievements of a people, a particular form of collective intellectual development. Because again, when we understand that we are created identity-wise after the image and likeness of the Most High, it is largely intellectual. How the Most High, the Creator, how Yah truly engages us, being, here's the word, omniscient, all-knowing, engages his creation intellectually. He wants your temples tuned into him. He wants you to fill your temples with life, with your full being, okay? So culture is to be protected. Culture is to protect. This is where it's so deep. I had a conversation with a classroom that one of my sisters in faith, she's an elder, peace be upon, not peace be upon, shalom to her. She invited me to speak with her class at the International University. I want to say it's in the Cayman Islands. And she invited me to talk about culture. And just to boil it down to the bare bones, I shared with them that there are only two cultures in life. There's a culture of life and existence. There's a culture of life, and there is a culture of death. Those are the only two cultures that ultimately exist. There's a culture of life, and there's a culture of death. And based on your identity, what you identify with, if you identify with life, you're going to be a part of the culture of life. If you identify with death, well, you're going to identify with the culture of death, right? And so in doing so, those two matters will be in conflict. And so the key is to protect yourself from the culture of death if you are one who is of the culture of life. And if you are of the culture of death, well, you don't want to deal with what the culture of life promotes. And this is what the scriptures intellectually tell us, because I guarantee you the culture of death, though there is a science to it, they've become very scientific in their cultural expression and their identity of death, the death cults that exist, okay? But it's passionate. It's more passionate. It's more based on their emotional and sensory experiences. They don't completely use the intellect and the spirit in the right sense. They use it to create death. That's not life. That's wicked. That's dark. And so the scriptures tell us in the wisdom, Jeremiah 10, 1 through 5, hear the word which Yah speaks to you, O house of Israel. Thus says Yah, do not learn the way of the Gentiles. The Gentiles are those who are uncivilized. They don't have a culture. What they do, excuse me, it's the culture of death. And do not be awed by the signs of the heavens, for the Gentiles are awed by them because they don't have an intellectual understanding of what their purposes are. We'll get to that next. For the prescribed customs of these peoples are worthless. For one cuts a tree from the forest, work for the hand of a craftsman with a cutting tool. They adorn it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and hammers so that it does not topple. They are like a rounded post, and they do not speak. They have to be carried because they do not walk. Do not be afraid of them, for they do no evil, nor is it in them to do any good. There is none like you, O Yah. You are great, and great is your name on high. I wonder if people really knew what the ornaments, the first ornaments that were hung on trees in this fashion were. Because when you do your historical research, you will see that it were heads. They did this to Nimrod, okay? Some call him Amraphel. Some call him Ninus. He has many different names and many different mythologies. But there were practices, cultures, cults, if you will, that were in existence that lived their life based on hanging heads on these trees, which today we know as Christmas trees. Because December 25th is the birth of his son, the rebirth of him reincarnated in his son, who was Tammuz. That's the origin of the winter solstice festival called Saturnalia. Okay, this is the culture that was practiced. But Yah says, learn not their ways. So he tells us in Revelation 22, verses 10 through 5, he said to me, do not seal the words of the prophecy of this book. You got to crack a book. You got to get into some intellectual interactions here, personally first, right? to go into your role, to then get into the social, so for the collective, okay? Do not seal the words of the prophecy of this book, because the time is near. He who does wrong, let him do more wrong. He who is filthy, let him be more filthy. He who is righteous, let him be more righteous. He who is set apart, let him be more set apart. So this means you find other identities up like this, and you get into your roles in those identities, and then you get into that collective for the social refinement. Okay, continuing on. He says, see, I am coming, and my reward is with me to give to each according to his work. What are you contributing to society? Do you have more debts, or are you actually in the black, if you will? Right? Are you increasing? Is your daily bread being provided? Are you increasing in your storehouses? And not just physically, is your health increasing? Right? These are the things we got to ask ourselves, because this is what culture is really producing, life on all levels. And see, I'm coming speedily. My reward is with me to give each according to his work. I am the Aleph and the Tall, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those doing his commands. This is a culture of people who identify as messianic and go about fulfilling their role. Okay? Blessed are those doing his commands, so that the authority shall be theirs. The authority shall be theirs unto the tree of life. Unto the tree of life. So what's that going to produce? Life. Who doesn't want life? Who wants to die? But then you have to ask, who wants to kill? Who wants to murder? Because that is starting to give you an identity of who people are. You can make sense of stuff way more easy that way, okay? But there, the authority shall be theirs into the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. But outside are the dogs, and those who enchant with drugs, and those who whore, and the murderers, and the idolaters, and all who love and do falsehood, the code of death. There is going to be a division as it was in the beginning. Let there be light, and there was light, right? Let the waters be separated from the waters. Right? Let the earth be separated from the waters. Let there be grass. Let there be seed, right? Then he even separated animals, each according to their kind. But this is to establish order. This is to create life. So the ruling bodies of each of those things, like the sun is the ruler of the day, the moon is the ruler of the night. Well, guess what? Adam is the ruler of humanity. But the Adam has to understand his role and identify with who he is. And if he's not able to do that, then that can never happen, culturally speaking. Okay, and this is about culture. So moving on to the last principle, which is purpose. So culture, let me kind of wrap that up. Let me come back and sum that up. Culture is the expression of identity, collective identity. Collective identity is the expression of personal identities, understanding their role for social oneness, so that the collective can function as one body, one mind, with each unique personality expressing themselves. But intellectually, they defer to principle. They defer to principle. This is what the role of the law is to play, because that's the standard, not me. If I just say arbitrarily, well, I'm right. I can be right, but I can be also unrighteous. You know what I'm saying? So when we get to the principle of the matter, we can move collectively as a culture, which is what this does. It is a coalescing principle, culture, which then identity aligned with culture creates purpose. Purpose in the 1300s was understood to be intention, aim, goal. This is why Marcus Garvey said one aim, one God, one destiny. That's why this show is dedicated to him, because he understood identity, he understood culture, he understood purpose. He understood aim, he understood aim is your identity, he understood God as culture, he understood that destiny was purpose. And destiny was ours to create, okay, through our refinement, personally and collectively. So again, purpose is intention, aim, goal. It is the object to be kept in view. Get out of your, we got to master our ego. Just put it that way. In identity, we have to master our ego. We have to become more what is called altruistic, which is a logically sensitive approach to selflessness. Okay, you want to be logically sensitive in a selfless sense. Okay, so you have to think of the other more than that. And I know that I've grown up as a selfish person because I'm an only child, but I'm learning to reform that. And so all praises to the Most High. Becoming selfless is a journey that I'm embarking to repair my world, to heal myself, right? Because it doesn't really lead to anything that is for oneness if you're just selfish. So we transform that. It is the proper function for which something exists. Purpose is the proper function for which something exists. It comes from an Anglo-French of purpose. It is an Old French purpose and aim and intention from proposer, to put forth, from por, which means forth, from a variant of Latin of pro, forth, see per. So purpose is to put into place. Okay, so etymologically, it is equivalent to the Latin propositum, which is a thing proposed or intended, but evidently formed in French from the same elements, from mid-14th century as theme of discourse, subject matter of a narrative. So it is a theme, it is a subject. It is hence to the purpose or appropriate, okay, on purpose, which means by design, intentionally, as attested from 1580s, earlier of purpose. So I'm only using these words because this is our conventional language. We got to understand and crack the code. I could easily have gone to some Hebrew or some other Swahili terms to give us a broader expanse, but time is short. So I just want to get into the word origin of the English, which is, you know, our lingua franca, if you will. But understanding purpose, Frantz Fanon, the Algerian philosopher, said that each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission or its purpose, if you will, fulfill it or betray it. So this is the purpose of culture and identity. And I guarantee you, if our identities were more collective and truly formed in a culture, our purpose would be that much more clear. And the ability to fulfill it will also be that much more clear. And I am saying today that when we understand that we are a kingdom of priests and a holy people, a set-apart nation, our reality will immediately transform into life. Into life. And the way that we do that is through the instructions that are given to fulfill those roles. When you go to work, you get an employee manual, a handbook, and you have to know the policies and the bylaws. How you gonna live life talking about it don't come with instructions? Well, the instructions are right under your doggone nose. You don't want to follow them, though. That's the problem. But what's that word? Digress. Let me get back to this here. Purpose, because my time is short. We getting short on time. I got 2 more verses and we done. Okay. Purpose. Genesis 1, 26 to 28. And let me say this real quick. Identity is your reflection in the image and likeness of Yah. Culture is being fruitful and multiplying. Purpose is reigning and ruling over everything that we're about to read right now in Genesis 1. Elohim said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the earth. Let them rule over them. How do they do that? Right here. Intellectually. They fulfill their purpose. They refine their identity. They refine their nature. And I guarantee you, when we get back in covenant with the Most High, can't nothing stop us on earth. Continuing. Elohim created man in his image. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Male and female, he created them. One. And they're both fire creatures. The word for man here is ish, which is a homonym of the word esh, just pronounced a little differently, which means fire. And isha, woman, means fire as well, the feminine form of fire. So we, in our truth, are fire. And how do we know? It says our El is a consuming fire. Yah is a consuming fire. Well, guess what Yah created? We're light beings. We have biophotons. I won't even really get into that, but we can glow, and that's fire. Your body's 98 degrees. That takes fire to get to 98 degrees. Let's continue on, though. Elohim blessed them, and Elohim said to them, bear fruit and increase. This is your culture. Bear fruit and increase. Your identity is your image and likeness for which you were created. Your culture is being fruitful and multiply. The purpose is for you to rule, first over yourself, and then over creation. Let's wrap this up with 2 Corinthians 5, 11 through 21. I'm going to get a little swig of water right quick. Excuse me if you don't mind. And so we're closing with 2 Corinthians 5, 11 through 21. I want to thank everybody for listening tonight who has tuned in. Feel free to share, man. Go to my blog. It's shiftingparadigms.wordpress.com. No vowels in shifting paradigms at all. So all consonants.wordpress.com. Subscribe, share, just feel free, Here we go. 2 Corinthians 5, 11 through 21. Knowing therefore the fear of the Most High, we persuade men. This is what our culture does. We persuade men, but we have been made manifested to Elohim, right? The key is to be about it, okay? And I also trust in your consciences to have been manifested. You have personally undergone this transformation as well. For we do not again commend ourselves to you, but give you an occasion to boast on our behalf, in order that you have an answer to those who take pride in appearance and not in heart. So you got to really refute those who are not really about that life, okay? You have an answer to those who take pride in appearance and not in heart. They haven't taken it to heart. But they want to, That's that ego. So that's what we have to master. And this is what he's saying. You've manifested yourself to Elohim. You ain't got to shout and holler from the rooftop. You know what life is, and you live life. Continuing on. For whether we are beside ourselves, it was for Elohim. Or whether we are of sound mind, it is for you, because we're witnesses. For the love of Messiah compels us, having judged this, that if one died for all, then all died. That's that one mind. That's that collective consciousness, that collective identity. And he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves. You can't be egotists in this life. They should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them. He showed them the example. And that death was to self first, because there's no death in life. And so when you die to yourself, which are your desires that are imbalanced and not ordered properly, and you're not in agreement in one with yourself, and your conscience is not clear, well, then you're not even identifying with yourself. But continuing on, living for that other, but for him who died for them and was raised, there's the key, and was raised, came to the crown, okay? So from now onwards, we know no one according to the flesh. And if we have known Messiah according to the flesh, this consciousness, if we knew the consciousness of the Messiah according to the flesh, yet now we no longer know him thus. We must know him in the consciousness, not just in the flesh. And if we have known Messiah according to the flesh, yet now we no longer know him thus. Therefore, if anyone is in Messiah, he is a new creature, personally. This is the transformation. This is the purpose and the culture by which we go about fulfilling it. If anyone is in Messiah, he is a renewed creature. The old matters have passed away. See, all matters have become renewed. New mind, transformed by the renewal of your mind. Okay, and all matters are from Elohim, who has restored us to favor with himself through Yahushua the Messiah, and has given us the service of restoration to favor. There's your culture. That's what your business is, the Father's business. Don't you know that I'm going to be about my Abba's business? That's what we have to be about. If we're about it, bringing the good news. There's life. Okay? Continuing on. And all matters are from Elohim, who has restored us to favor with himself through Yahushua Messiah and has given us the service of restoration to favor. That is, that Elohim was in Messiah, restoring the world to favor unto himself, not reckoning their trespasses to them, and was committed to us and has committed to us the word of restoration to favor. Now, we do that same role, okay? This is the commission, if you will. Therefore, we are envoys. And if you look up that word as your identity, you're an envoy, your role. This is your role. You are an envoy of the kingdom of heaven on earth. Understand that. That's some power. That's some authority and righteousness, of course, that has to be exercised. Well, has to be acknowledged, embraced, and then exercised. And we all have that responsibility. Therefore, we are envoys on behalf of Messiah, as though Elohim were pleading through us. We beg on behalf of Messiah, be restored to favor with Elohim. Find that in here. Go in here. Go into your personal identity to find where Elohim is, to bring you into your role so that you can be a part of this social collective, okay? For he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of Elohim. And this is all about redemption. So when you understand the principle of redemption here at work and the exchange that was to take place of someone like a Dr. King, like a Malcolm, laying their lives down for the people now see the vision of that man and understand the consciousness in which he was, not only understand, but identify with the consciousness in which he was walking, embody that themselves. That's the spark. So this is Shifting Paradigms. I'm your host, B. Michael. I want to thank everybody for tuning in here on KUAW Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom Radio. We'll be back in 2 weeks. My next show, I plan to talk about cryptocurrency. I want to get into some cryptocurrency. I want to get into what is known as Binance. So I hope to have some guests on the show next week and hopefully bring a good paradigm to you all, paradigmatic. But this was again, identity, culture, and purpose paradigmatics. I want to thank Barbara G and KUAW Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom Radio for hosting us. Thank you all again for listening. B. Michael signing out. Peace and power, peace and blessings. Shalom, shalom.